Let's get into a little discussion here, guys, on how this is going to affect the overall market. And I'm speaking of OMICRON, the new variant of COVID. I don't know why I'm so excited about this. COVID-19. Obviously, there's a discussion to be had on how we should approach the market and some preparation to be done. Lots of articles to discuss when it comes to people actually talking about this already. And I mean, I'll show you one here from the New York Times. It has arrived. Today's, we're sitting here on Wednesday, obviously. Today's the first day in the U.S. How do we prepare ourselves? You know, we can talk long-term, we can talk intraday, but how do we prepare ourselves overall for trading specifically around this news headline?
You go back to history, right? That's the first thing I want to say, because like I read some articles too, and CNBC had a couple out saying this would be a buying opportunity, and I think a lot of that has to do with, and I'm going to use AAL as an example because I want to do some of the individual travel stocks I think people are going to be interested in. If you go back, there's 2 dates for the Delta variant. It was late December when it was discovered. So if you go to a daily chart, you can kind of look at what happened with the Delta variant in late December. We essentially got sold off, and something like an AAL pulled back about, it was roughly 20% or so, and then you can see what happened. It went 15 all the way up to make this double top. Now, the interesting thing about that double top, by the way, is when the Delta variant got named, that was the top. So when it went from the status of actually getting the name, it was actually pretty, it's been pretty negative to the downside. But I think it's the discovery of it and then that little panic sell, which by the way, it lasted, the greater part of the month before you even made a bottom there in the early January. So it's not as if it was okay, like 1 or 2 days and we're going to catch a bit of a bid. And I think this is where what we're talking about, where you might have some pain for a little while before you make a bottom. And I just want to look at that sort of history and say, hey, it took a while before that got digested, and then you got a bit of a bounce. And I think that's the only thing that we can look at in terms of relating it to one of the other big variants. There's lots of things that you want to consider, of course, by getting data with how transmissible this ends up being, and then understanding how fast that spread is. Hospitalizations, of course, going to be a big factor because you want to see how effective the vaccines are at preventing serious disease. So there's lots to look at. But it's worth keeping in mind that when looking for those buying opportunities, because AAL, that $15 range from Delta low, that looks pretty good. Let's allow it to settle down before you necessarily jump in and buy right in front of that level, which it's pretty close to, less than 10% away.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think we've been talking about it for a while, and I think patience is going to win the day here. And you just have to say, do you believe in science? And if you do, then I think that we could have basically a recovery that we've already had here. We're in the early days of this thing. So I'm going to look over at Zoom again and basically just look at it and say, this is March of 2020 right here, where people are starting to talk about Zoom, right? And starting to talk about, them possibly being involved in everyone's day-to-day life. And now Zoom is like almost like to Google something right now. So Zoom used to mean, go fast, Zoom, cars. Now we know all about the product. And now Zoom has come right back in here to, May, June of 2020 levels. So again, like that's kind of right when this kind of started getting ramped up here. And I think you got to look back to some of the old names that have worked in this environment. And I like Zoom here. There's a few other names. Peloton's been beat down as well. Maybe that gets some life as we get going. But I think the same thing can be said for many of these symbols. I mean, even if you go over there to the spiders, which is the S&P 500, right? And we can call up a daily chart and see what's happening right now. These are the last couple days. All we're doing is touching back to the 50-period moving average. So I do not think it's time right now to ring the sirens or anything like that. You have some pullbacks that are definitely possible. The 200 period is a little ways away. And even if you get to that 200 period, we're just going back to October levels. So, I mean, it's 2 months going to be erased if we drop all the way back in here. We were not expecting another variant, but the market got it. And, we can always look at Moderna, Pfizer, all those kind of plays. But I really just think, just nibble in here. I mean, if you believe in science, it should eventually bounce back up. And we'll wait to see where we go from here. But this is just another story to go along with the COVID train that's brought the market to where it is. And we're at all-time highs right now. So a little bit of a pullback, I think, is healthy. I'd rather it be market related rather than what we're talking about right now, but it is what it is, and let's just deal with it.
Patience is key. I think that's a great point to leave this off on and understand that we've been here before. We've been through this before a couple of times now. So there is more information available as a whole as to the way the market will react going forward. I read a great article 2 nights ago on this very topic that summed it up brilliantly, I thought. It essentially said, we now live in a world that includes COVID-19.
Right.
Get used to it. It's not going anywhere.